It was late, one of those nights where the parking lot lights feel too bright and everything else feels kind of dim. I was sitting in my car with the engine still running, phone in my hand, just scrolling for a second before going inside. A few bank notifications popped up, nothing alarming. $12 here, $26 there. The kind of charges your brain barely registers because they look familiar enough. I remember thinking, yeah, that tracks, and swiping them away without really stopping. What stuck with me later wasn't what I bought. It was that I couldn't even remember why. None of it came from wanting something. It felt more like paying to end the day, paying to not have to think anymore. At the time, it didn't feel irresponsible. It felt normal. And that might have been the part that bothered me the most, even if I didn't notice it yet. Food was a big part of it, but not in the dramatic way people usually mean. Not fancy dinners or splurges. Just delivery on nights when the fridge wasn't empty. But the idea of deciding felt heavier than the extra $15. $20 for a meal I ate while standing in the kitchen. $35 when I added a drink and didn't question it. I used to tell myself it was about time or convenience or having earned it after a long day. But when I actually thought about it, I wasn't hungry most of those times. I was just done. 4 nights a week like that turns into maybe $100. Stretch that out and suddenly it's $5,000 a year spent on meals I barely remember. This is the part I didn't want to look at first. Not because the number is shocking, because nothing about it felt intentional. Subscriptions were easier to ignore. That was kind of their whole design. $8 here, $12 there, $15 for something I signed up for during a free trial and never really thought about again. I used to tell myself it wasn't worth the hassle to cancel. It felt almost cheap to care. But when I finally sat down and listed them out, the number surprised me in a quiet way. Not panic, more like a slow blink. $50, maybe $60 a month going to things I wouldn't miss if they disappeared tomorrow. Over a year, that's $700. Over 5 years, it's a used car's worth of nothing memorable. What got me wasn't the money. It was realizing how passive the whole thing was. I didn't choose to keep paying. I just never chose to stop. Then there were the upgrades, faster shipping, premium versions, the little boxes you check at checkout that promise smoother, better, easier. I always told myself it was worth it. $10 extra to save a day, $5 for fewer ads. It felt harmless in the moment, like I was optimizing life. But when I thought back, I couldn't remember a single time those upgrades actually mattered. They just faded into normal, almost immediately. I added them up once, just roughly, maybe $40 a month, $500 a year. Real money. Traded for convenience I forgot about by the time the receipt hit my inbox. There was something quietly embarrassing about that. Not because it was reckless, because it was forgettable. Gas stations got me more than I realized. Not gas itself. The other stuff. Drinks I didn't need. Snacks I wasn't craving. A couple bucks here, 4 there because I was already stopped and it felt silly not to. I used to think of those purchases as random, but they weren't. Same days, same times, same excuses. On my way home, before work, when I was tired, when I added it up, it came out to maybe $20 a week. That doesn't sound like much until you say it out loud for a year. $1,000 on stuff I didn't plan, didn't need, and barely enjoyed. I never once thought of myself as someone who wasted money. That's probably why this one stung. Credit cards smoothed everything over. That was the appeal. Swipe now. Deal with it later. I told myself I was responsible because I wasn't drowning in debt. The balances weren't exploding, but there was always a little bit rolling. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. Enough to rack up interest without setting off alarms. I did the math once on what that interest actually cost me in a year. It wasn't horrifying, just annoying. A couple $100 paid for nothing except time. Time to not think about it. What bothered me was how calm I felt while paying extra. Like the card had quietly trained me to accept that convenience has a monthly fee. A lot of money went toward being agreeable. Coffee runs, group lunches, nights out I didn't really want, but didn't feel like explaining my way out of. I liked thinking of myself as easygoing, low maintenance. But when I looked back, I realized how often I was paying to avoid a small moment of awkwardness. 15 here, 30 there, it adds up faster than you expect. 2 lunches a week you didn't care about becomes $300 a month. That realization sat weird with me, not angry, just tired. I wasn't buying fun. I was buying smoothness. And smoothness turned out to be more expensive than I thought. Late night online shopping was another quiet one. Not big purchases, just small things that felt useful in the moment. A cable, a tool, something to organize something else. I always had a reason ready. Future me will need this. It's on sale. It's only $20. But when I looked around my place, most of it blended into the background. Stuff that didn't change my day at all. I added up a few months once and realized I was spending about $100 a month like that. Over a year, that's $1,200 driven mostly by boredom. That number didn't scare me. It just felt unnecessary. I leaned on the phrase, treat yourself, more than I wanted to admit. Anytime I felt worn down, it showed up. A nicer coffee. A dessert, I didn't want that badly. A small splurge to make the day feel justified. I told myself it was self-care. And sometimes it probably was. But most of the time, it was just relief. Temporary and forgettable. When I added those treats up over a month, it was easily $200. That's when the discomfort crept in. Not guilt, just confusion. I wasn't feeling better overall. I was just repeatedly hitting pause on feeling bad. At some point, it became clear this wasn't random. There was a pattern. Almost all of it happened when I was tired, rushed, or mentally done. I wasn't careless. I was avoiding friction. I didn't want to cook, decide, wait, or explain. I wanted the moment to stop asking something from me. When I roughly totaled everything across categories, the number landed somewhere around $800 a month. Not all at once, quietly, spread out. That was the part I resisted at first. Because once you see that, it's hard to pretend it's just life happening to you. I spent a lot of money trying to save time. Faster routes, express services, convenience fees that felt justified because time is valuable. And it is. But when I thought about what I actually did with the time I saved, it was usually nothing. Scrolling, sitting, zoning out. I did a quick calculation once and realized I was spending about $100 a month buying back minutes I didn't really use. That realization didn't feel dramatic. It just felt off. Like I'd misunderstood the trade without realizing it. Annual renewals always annoyed me when they hit. Like they came out of nowhere. Gym memberships I hadn't used. Services I forgot existed. I'd see the charge and feel irritated, even though I'd signed up willingly. Breaking them down into monthly costs made it worse in a quiet way. $10 here, $20 there, spread out, it felt harmless. Together, it was another couple hundred a year slipping by because I wasn't paying attention. Forgetting something doesn't make it free. That was an uncomfortable thought to sit with. Upgrading everyday things felt justified. Better headphones, nicer versions, premium options that promised quality of life. I told myself I deserved them, and maybe I did. But the thing about better is how fast it becomes baseline. I stopped noticing almost immediately. When I added up the difference between the standard and upgraded versions over a year, it wasn't small. $500, maybe more. The weird part was how little satisfaction was left behind. Expectations adjusted faster than enjoyment. Apps made spending feel polite. Rounding up, tipping screens suggested add-ons. It always felt awkward to say no, so I didn't. $1 here, $2 there. It felt generous, but when I looked at how often that happened, it came out to about $70 a month, $800 a year. I wasn't mad about it. I just hadn't realized how much of my money was leaving through moments I barely remembered clicking yes. Groceries were another optimistic lie I told myself. I shopped for a version of me with energy and discipline. Fresh produce, big plans, and then the week happened. Things spoiled. Meals didn't happen. I threw food away without thinking much about it. When I estimated how much that cost me monthly, it was around $100. Not because groceries are expensive, because energy is inconsistent. That one felt frustrating in a quiet way. Good intentions don't get refunds. A lot of spending was really about fixing feelings. Coffee to feel motivated. Snacks to feel calmer. Small purchases to break boredom. None of them were expensive on their own, but they were frequent. Predictable. I added up a typical week once and realized I was spending about $40 just trying to shift how I felt. Over a year, that's $2,000. Seeing that number made me pause. I wasn't reckless, I was coping. And coping had a price tag. Maintenance spending snuck in too. Replacing things early. Fixing minor annoyances instead of adjusting. Paying for speed because patience felt expensive. I told myself I was being efficient, but when I looked closer, impatience was doing most of the spending. Rough estimate, another $1,000 a year. That one came with a mix of acceptance and regret. Urgency always inflates the bill. None of this made me happier. It just made things quieter for a moment. Less friction, less resistance. When I thought about how much of my income went toward emotional buffering, it felt heavy in a low-grade way. I worked real hours to fund temporary numbness. That thought lingered longer than I expected. Relief is convincing. Improvement takes longer. I thought about how many of these habits I defended, how reasonable they sounded at the time, how easily I explained them away. Awareness didn't feel empowering at first. It felt late, like showing up halfway through a movie. I imagined what those yearly totals could have been if I'd noticed earlier, not as a plan, just as a thought. There wasn't panic, just wait. The kind that makes you sit a little quieter. Now, sometimes I'm back in that car at night, phone lighting up with another small charge. It doesn't feel dramatic, but it feels different. I notice it. I don't always stop it. That's the honest part. A lot of this probably won't disappear, but the numbers stay with me now. $800 a month, 10 grand a year. Not loud, just there. And sometimes I think that noticing is the only part of this that actually changes anything. Or maybe it just makes it harder to look away.